Monitor your application. We're going to have a look in this section around continuous monitoring and how to become insight-driven, taking on the operations to development approach. Then we're going to look at how to add monitoring to your website or application using Microsoft Application Insights. Then finally, we'll look at interactive data analysis and application insight analytics and monitoring the Azure diagnostics and proactive detection. So what is OpsDev? Well, we've talked about DevOps and the importance of getting stuff quickly from development into operations, but how about bringing that information back the other way? This is where OpsDev really brings the feedback loop, which we explored earlier in the chapters, around how you get insight to your organization and understand what your end users are doing and how their digital experience is. This also allows you to start shifting right, which is pulling the information from the real world back into development. So this is when teams start blurring the lines between the operational tools and the development tools. Okay, so we're going to look at monitor and learn. So the feedback cycle from the monitoring tools allows us to learn and then plan our next iteration. Continuous monitoring and becoming an insight-driven organization. Continuous monitoring. Become insight-driven. Monitoring your application is important as part of DevOps. Knowing how your application is used to help further develop it and close the ops development loop. In this section, we're going to look at application insights and how we can help you monitor in real time and learn what the real users are doing. So why are we doing this? It's because application insights is a part of most modern day application performance management tools. These are designed to help development, but also help operations manage day-to-day issues that could potentially be happening in production. So, what does the application insight landscape look like? Well, there's going to be your application, there's going to be back-end systems, there's going to be your enterprise service bus, there's going to be a number of different tiers depending on your architecture, and this could be either on-premise or in the cloud. And then you may be using a number of different tools: alerts, Power BI for insight and analytics, Visual Studio for development, and also for real-time debugging and diagnosis, and also REST APIs to be able to get messages and issues and alerts sent into other systems, and also to do this continuous development capability. So, one of the recommendations on this module is to look at the Power BI analytics and see how that can really help. You can do this by downloading Power BI desktop, which is free, and then just connecting it to your data source. In this case, it could be a database or it could be application insights. Okay, application insights. So 2 components. First, you need to measure and learn. First is measure, and this is how you look at application insights and look at setting up telemetry data. This can be done when you first create an application. It also can be retro-engineered to any existing application. And then what you want to be able to do is learn. So that's take that telemetry data and use it for insight, and then set up notifications to help you become insight-driven. So how do we learn from production? Some of the challenges which you probably have already been faced with is understanding availability and performance of applications. This is part of more performance engineering. However, learning from what's happening in the real world and using performance application lifecycle, PAL, to shift that right is important. It also allows you to discover root cause analysis. So this is where you potentially are getting a particular issue, such as a memory leak, which is causing decremental effect. And also, it's allowed you to identify where you need to invest your time, and if that is in performance, that could be why you invest in application insight. So you can look at detecting issues, look at the diagnosis of crashes, so stack traces, and both web and mobile applications. Some components are in public preview, however, some additional components are fully productionized. So once we finish this module, we'll be able to cover understanding availability and performance, root cause analysis, and also making those data-driven decisions earlier. So what is Shift Right? Well, this is one of the components I've spoke about for many years. There's an automation pattern for shifting right, backdating to 1990, which talks about the encapsulation of interactions. And those digital interactions can be captured in something like an APM tool. So that could be Application Insights, that could be Splunk, it could be App Dynamics, it could be Dynatrace. Once you've got those interactions, you can look at modeling those out, cause and effect using tools where you can then do pinpoint failure, and you can learn the behaviors of your end users. You can then automate those workflows using something like a business process modeling tool to give you a schematic or a blueprint of how your application is actually used. And also you can look at the gap analysis around potential use cases which don't exist in production and maybe functionality which is not being used anymore. You can validate those against your own business processes. And you can also look at behavioral experiments. So you could look at what happens when you change the flows and what happens in different regions and use all the analytics capability. And part of what we're trying to do here is monitor the end-to-end experience for your end customers. So insight-driven delivery. This is the feedback loop from learning to the thinking component to what should we be building and why. So what we're doing is we're going to be looking at monitoring, and that's things such as infrastructure. It's also discovery of nodes and probing those nodes to understand where all those assets are and how they're performing, any changes that have happened, systemic failure, issues with the network, and how we quickly respond to them. With things like RPA, robotic process automation, which we'll cover in the next chapter, you may also be looking at probing endpoints, which when things go wrong, so logs which are generated when something falls over, or if a file location is not available. We also do this because we want to be able to understand how to scale, the right capacity planning for the infrastructure, and as the business grows, how do we meet those demands of our customers. And then finally, which won't be covered in this module, is around security. Part of it is things like auditing, identity and access, and also making sure the correct access rights are given to users and they're not accessing information that they shouldn't be. Now this is incredibly complex, and partly we're trying to set the basis that information should be flowing backwards and forwards inside. And that insight may come from the operate section. So if you look on the far right hand corner, we're pulling that information across. And then as you'd expect from a development, you're looking at the value going towards operations, but you've also got to connect the customer, which is the end user experience or digital experience, with the business. So what the actual processes are and what people are actually using. There's further information available here in the design ops pattern.